Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. I'm very grateful to have you here and with us as we round out the Christmas week. We've got some business to attend to. You may have seen from the headlines some interesting things happening on the Trump certification and the transition into the White House. Let me give you a preview of what we're talking about. Then we'll zoom in on each of these in greater detail. But a big story is about the speaker election and whether or not Mike Johnson will be the next speaker for the incoming Congress. And if we don't have a speaker very quickly, what we'll see is that the House can't do anything at all. Okay, this article tells us the House absolutely, unequivocally cannot do anything until we elect a speaker. And so what happens if we don't have a speaker? Maybe we don't have President Trump? Oh my gosh. So there's a lot of numbers, a lot of analysis here. We're going to go through it, and there's more reaction to this because they're talking about it on Fox News. Roll Call is saying there's a gray area here, and there's a lot of analysis going on this one little nuance. Of course, the nuances are where it ultimately matters. So we'll go through that. We've got clips here from Rand Paul talking about his take on the current speaker. He has long not been a fan of Mike Johnson, saying he's going to be out of there. So is Rand Paul going to be proven correct? We'll come back and listen to what he has to say. Then we're turning our attention to Arizona because we have this woman called Chris Mays. She is our attorney general from Arizona, and she's just one of the worst. And so she's out now saying she's going to stand firm against President Trump. We're united. Against what? America, who just elected a president? We'll read through what she says here. She says she's not afraid of the Trump immigration policies and so on and so forth. But what's also interesting about this woman is she took a bunch of free legal representation from this group called the States United Democracy Center. And this group sent a letter over to her, a huge group of lawyers and other people sent a letter to her saying, we'll basically work with your office for free to fortify the elections. You see, this is a letter that we'll go through that came over to us courtesy of a locals friend, also courtesy of Jeff Clark. And so he says he's got documents showing that Norm Eisen is essentially commandeering the Attorney General's office from the state of Arizona. And Jeff Clark, obviously been a victim of a ton of lawfare, and we'll talk about that. So we've got that letter that we'll read through, and then we'll just play a little bit of this. I know it's Friday, and I know this is Jennifer Rubin, and I know we're trying to enjoy the Christmas cheer and be happy people, but so we'll only listen to a little bit of this. But I wanted to show you what they're talking about. This is Mark Elias. He says, beware of attack Democrat, like a dog or something. Okay, because he's got dogs all over the place. Anyways, we'll listen to a little bit of this interview and hear what these people sound like when they talk amongst themselves. Then we'll turn our attention to what's happening in the Diddy Jay-Z saga, because we had a new order that came down from the judge in the civil lawsuit. This was a civil lawsuit brought by a person who says that she was abused when she was the age of 13. Golly. So filed this complaint, and an order just came down the day after Christmas from the judge. She's not happy about what Jay-Z's team has submitted to her. So we'll go through their submission because they asked for a bunch of stuff in there. And you can see they were asking for an order to show cause, which basically means you're being called to the principal's office. The order to show cause is, it's like pulling out a bazooka in the middle of a litigation, a civil case here. So we'll talk about it. The judge reamed them pretty aggressively, says, little tactics here are not going to work. And there's some big names in this. Jay-Z, obviously, J-Lo, and others all being caught up on it. And we've got more reaction from the news. So bunch of stuff to attend to today, my friends. Very glad that you're here and with us. Thanks for joining. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for sharing the show with a friend or family member so that they can be a part of what we do here. I very much appreciate that. Now, before we get into the business on the day, we've got to talk about being healthy because the holidays are here, which means it's sick season. I still got a little bit of it lingering. People have had sinus infections, strep throat, upper respiratory situations. respiratory hacking, all the way all over the place. We've been out and about. But guess what? You don't have to deal with it this year alone, because this little blue case that you're going to see here in 1 second has the things that you need ready to go. Inside of that, you'll have ivermectin, Z-Pak, amoxicillin, tons of great stuff inside that comes to us courtesy of our friends at the Wellness Company. And so if you have it, you can tackle anything that your body throws your way. Now, this kit cuts through the red tape. It allows you to take control of your health. You don't have to be reactive and go into emergency rooms and things like that. You don't need a gatekeeper, because their medical board created a guidebook that outlines treatments for all sorts of things. UTIs, strep throat, bacterial infections. The guidebook will show you how to use it and what works. And so you can travel with some peace of mind this holiday season. Order your kit now. Go to twc.health/Robert and use code Robert when you check out. That way you'll save $30 off and you'll get free shipping, courtesy of our friends at the Wellness Company. Now, this kit's only for USA residents, and so be healthy this holiday season and as we go into 2025. Thanks to our friends at the Wellness Company for sponsoring today's episode. All right, and so now, my friends, without any further ado, let's get into the news on the day, because we've got this very scandalous story that is percolating across our politics. A delay in President Trump's certification? Say it ain't so. The House has to elect a speaker, otherwise there will be some consequences. And I've got several articles here today from Fox News, Roll Call, and others saying that if there is no speaker, there will be consequences. Here is what Chad Pergram from Fox News is communicating, saying, listen, it's a problem that's been percolating for a while. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's been underground, subterranean, lurking underneath, except to those of us who are here. The issue is gurgled to the top now that we have a new Congress coming in. And here's what the background is. Congress spasmed between a staggering 1,500-page bill. We saw that. Then they cut it back down after everybody flipped out all over the internet and threw a fit. Trump supported the bill. 38 Republicans voted against the bill, and things got tense. We remember Mike Johnson was right in the middle of this. He's like, we need more money. We have to spend it because whatever. And they got more spending passed. But Johnson is not emerging from that battle unscathed. In fact, some Republicans are very upset with him. And so here is the math as it stands today. The House clocks in 434 members, 1 vacancy. Matt Gaetz left. So we're down 1. He resigned his position for this Congress a few weeks ago. Now, even though Gaetz won the next election, his resignation letter says he's not going into the next Congress. Okay, so we're down 1. So then the breakdown is 219 to 215 when the new Congress starts, coming up very soon. Now, Trump's pick for national security advisor is called Mike Waltz. He remains in the House for now, but Trump's going to pull him up eventually. So does Elise Stefanik from New York. She's going to the ambassador to the UN. Now, that's all pending, and so that might happen January, February, once the Senate makes their advice and consent. Once they resign, what do the numbers look like? 217 to 214. But the speaker's election is on January 3rd, okay, before any of this happens. So the numbers will dwindle, but they'll still be higher than the 217 to 214 for a bit. But here's the question for Johnson. The Speaker of the House must win an outright majority of all members casting ballots by name. In other words, the person with the most votes does not win. It's got to be a majority. That's what happened to Kev McCarthy. Remember, Kev McCarthy was outpolling Hakeem Jeffries, but he still didn't win. It took days for McCarthy to actually get the majority, and then finally he won. So we'll come back to that, he says. But what about Mike Johnson and the math for him? He says, if there are 219 Republicans and 4 voted for someone else besides him, so anyone else, Elon Musk, for example, as Rand Paul has been contemplating, and no one attained an outright majority, we have no speaker. So the magic number then is 218 votes in order to get the majority. By rule, this paralyzes the House. Okay, we need a speaker because without one, the House absolutely unequivocally cannot do anything until it elects a speaker, period. Now, roll call's also talking about this, and they say maybe that's not accurate. Maybe there's this gray area where they could do something else. But as it stands, this is a possibility. The House can't swear in members. Technically, they're still representatives elect. Only after the House chooses its speaker does he or she turn in and then swear in the new membership. They can't pass any legislation, no committees. It's frozen in paralysis until we have a new speaker. So he says, all right, America, sit down for this part. Okay, we are. Now, I hope you're sitting down says this also means that the House cannot certify the results of the Electoral College, which would make Trump the 47th president of the United States on January 6th officially. Uh-oh. The failure to elect a speaker compels the House to vote over and over and over and over until it finally taps someone. Remember when we were back here with McCarthy, Kev, 15 ballots over 5 days 2 years ago, over 2 days. The House settled into a congressional cryogenic freeze for 3 weeks after the members threw out McCarthy. Members weeks were like, what's going on? It burned through 2 speaker candidates. Steve Scalise came and went. Tom Emmer came and went. Jim Jordan was contemplated, but that didn't happen. So you see the problem. What happens if this goes on again? What happens if we go through that same rigmarole? Consider for a moment that prior to the last year, the House never went to a second ballot to select a speaker. Prior to last year, never happened. Not since 1923. It took 63 ballots for them to finally pick someone in 1849. Well, that's nothing. In fact, the longest speaker election consumed 2 months in 1856 on the 133rd ballot. So 2 months, could you imagine? Oh my goodness. 2 months, they don't actually have Trump certified. So anything which elongates this, because what happens if Republicans break and join the Democrats, and then the Democrats execute the Hill plan that we read from those insurrectionists on their opinion piece that they published yesterday, where they explained that there is still a lawful justification for rejecting ballots that are not regularly given. Remember that? And so they could then just not count the electoral ballots that came in from the red states because Trump was not regularly voted for because of insurrection in the 14th Amendment, they say. So if you cannot give it back to the Democrats because then maybe they will actually disqualify him. So if anything, this elongates into a collision with January 6th, which is the statutory day. We know January 6th is big. So will the Republicans come together and just pick Johnson to get it over with? There's no dispute Trump won the election. There's no anticipation of a repeat of J6, but a failure to certify the Electoral College on the day it's supposed to be done is playing with fire. Such a scenario, again, would be very fragile to the American electoral and political system. Now, on January 6th, they're supposed to go in to meet and tabulate the votes. Any dispute over a state's slate of electoral votes compels the House and the Senate to debate these things. And we were here when they did that with Ted Cruz, and we're trying to unpack what happened there. Then January 6th happened. Now, in the case of Kamala, she is this president of the Senate. So she comes in and announces a victor. So they're starting to control a lot of levers of power here. Now, Congress is not required to certify it on January 6th, and there is some leeway. In 2021, he says the Electoral College wasn't certified until 3:52 a.m. on January 7th, right? Because they were out of the congressional building, the Capitol, for like 4.5 hours. Great. It only became a major problem if it drags on through noon of January 20th. That's when President-elect takes the oath of office. But if it's 3 weeks of back and forth, or 2 months, like in the 1800s, that's a problem. What happens if they're not sorted by January 20th? Well, Biden's done, okay? He's done on the 20th, so he goes. Same with Harris. So next, who's in line, if they're both termed out, they're both expired, and there's no speaker because they haven't voted for the speaker, so who becomes the president? Oh my gosh, what the heck? Well, there is at the moment a president pro tem of the Senate, the most senior member of the majority party. He or she is fourth in line to the presidency. At that moment, it's a senator who's a Democrat called Patty Murray from Washington. But Republicans claimed control of the chamber in early January. And unlike the House, if it's stymied over a speaker, the Senate is functioning. That means 91-year-old Senate Chuck Grassley from Iowa becomes the Senate president. He served since 1981. So if the House is still frittering away trying to elect a speaker, Chuck Grassley becomes president, which ain't bad. That's not bad. Okay, this could be a lot worse. I write likely because it's into some serious extra constitutional stuff. This is all unprecedented. Strange lands never visited in the American political experience before. But I'm down for Grassley. He's great. It all hinges on Mike Johnson, or frankly, someone else. If they can get the speaker vote and get voted into on January 3rd, we're good. Otherwise, any interregnum, like the past two speaker elections, begins establishing challenges to historical precedent. So we'll see. Unclear if the House can avoid such contretemps. It's about the math. And once again, balancing the equation is tenuous at best. So interesting article, interesting thesis there. Now, Roll Call has some more on this. They say, we actually do have some options. They say there are options. If we don't have a speaker, some things that we can do about this. They say ill will against Mike Johnson might make things difficult. In fact, as president of the Senate, Kamala Harris would be the presiding officer during a joint session of Congress when they're having to then certify the election. But now we don't know if we're going to actually have a speaker. Now, there's one big gray area. As speaker, Johnson will not have a presiding official role during J6. But what happens in the 3 days before could be crucial. The country's going through one big gray area, they say. One political science person at ASU, Arizona, shout out, said about a speaker fight that goes into J6, he says, the one precedent is clear, and it could help determine what happens after the start of a new Congress. The election of the speaker is the first thing that they do. Nothing else happens until the speaker is elected. It's happened that way since 1789. Said, and now that worked for them, so that works for us. Now, Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie said he's not voting for Johnson on the floor. Massie says, no, sorry, not going to happen. And if we start having people peel off, it's a razor-thin majority. What happens if Johnson doesn't get the votes? The House clerk presides over the speaker elections, including at the start of a new Congress. Among the early actions on January 3rd, which is according to the congressional report, the clerk will order a quorum call before the House proceeds to the floor election for speaker. And then she'll conduct that with the assistance of the tellers. But even if a speaker is not elected in time for J6, multiple congressional and legal scholars say that they could do a clerk if both parties agree. The clerk could potentially swear in the House members to ensure that the Constitution is followed. So they can organize themselves, and the clerk could swear people in. Now, while there's no precedent in U.S. history to guide House members through this, they do have the authority to make up precedent, as they say. And if that's necessary, one option would be if they're able to reach an agreement where they could proceed or without any speaker. Somebody from Notre Dame Law School also said the Constitution gives them the ability to organize themselves, and they could also create a joint session without a speaker. So they reached out to this guy. He's over at Loyola Marymount University. He weighed in on this. Says Levitt said the teller portion could be handled by the majority vote or unanimous consent, and any objections would be unlikely. And so maybe they could do this without a speaker. They also will typically pass concurrent resolutions and more, but under this option, the clerk would have the procedural authority in order to elect a temporary speaker. If there was political will, elect a temporary speaker just for this process and then pull them back out again. They interviewed a bunch of experts. The best option, elect somebody on the 3rd. We'll see if the Republicans can figure it out. The biggest force that could make that happen would be political pressure. That would be especially the Republicans under tremendous pressure to select a speaker Trump would be applying that pressure too once it became clear that they may not be coming close to this. So if Johnson cannot muster enough votes, who's coming next? Anybody who wants it, they said, is not in their right mind. Anybody who wants the job, obviously, isn't in their right mind, says a California Republican. So they're talking a lot about it. Here is how Fox News is reporting it.
Todd, Katie, and Joey.
Madeline Rivera, live for us this morning. Maddie, thank you. Look, when I look at
Here's
House
this.
must win.
Spill on this, Maddie.
Hi, guys. Good morning. The first order of business for the House when Congress convenes January 3rd is electing a House Speaker. It's all about the math. The House clocks in with 434 members with one vacancy, thanks to former Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. The breakdown is 219 Republicans to 215 Democrats. The Speaker of the House must win an outright majority of all members. Current Speaker Mike Johnson is on thin ice with the right flank of his party after last week's debacle over government spending.
Before the last couple of weeks, I was, in his corner, but now I'm, we should consider what's the best path forward. We do need to consider whether, if we're going to advance Mr. Trump's agenda, whether the current leadership is what we need.
Johnson relied on Democrats to get the final funding bill across the finish line. It's a similar scenario to 2023 when former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy worked with Democrats to keep the government open. Gaetz then triggered the vote to oust McCarthy. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries signals Democrats won't be helping Johnson.
And there will be no Democrats available to save him or the extreme MAGA Republicans from themselves based on the breaching of a bipartisan agreement.
Without a speaker, the House...
Why does he always talk like that?
...is paralyzed. It can't swear in members, it can't pass legislation, and here's the kicker. It cannot certify the results of the Electoral College on January 6th. Todd, Katie, and Joey.
All right, so what's going to happen? Are those Republicans who are unhappy with Johnson, are they going to continue to remain unhappy with Johnson, or are they going to fall in line and get behind him because the pressure will be on massively? And if there's not someone else who's already emerged as a consensus person, you have to suspect that Johnson is going to be the path of least resistance. Now, other options are out there. Rand Paul says, the Speaker of the House doesn't need to be a member of Congress, and nothing would disrupt the swamp more than electing Elon Musk Speaker of the House. Think about it. Nothing's impossible. This is America. And not to mention the joy it's seeing the collective establishment, aka the Uniparty, lose their ever-loving minds, from Rand Paul. Now, Elon Musk is a good option. Another good option is Adam Johnson, the lectern guy, because he's got a lot of experience with lecterns. And he's a smart dude, too, and handsome, too. So you can see Rand Paul is clearly onto something here. If we cannot get Johnson or someone else, they all like Elon. So we'll keep our eyes on that one. Here was Rand Paul talking about the spending and how upset he is in the aftermath of Johnson's debacle.
I got a lot of problems with big spenders in both parties. And here's the thing. Everywhere you look, you find more of this stuff. $1 trillion. That means we found a lot of waste. But it's everywhere. It's in all the big departments, in the Department of State. It's in NIH. It's in the National Science Foundation. And people wonder why.
Some of these were from the report that we covered, the Festivus report, in a prior video. Iraqi Sesame Street, 20 million. Cat experiments. Okay, these were horrible and gruesome and immoral. Cat experiments. $10 million. $2.1 million on Paraguay border security when they're selling off our wall. Pickleball. $12 million for the Department of Interior on a pickleball complex in Las Vegas. $12 million. And we saw the aerial photos of that. It looks very nice. Government employees playing pickleball. Should be on America's Funniest Home Videos. Okay. Climate action in Brazil. $3 million for girl-centered climate action in Brazil, and drag shows on ice, just a small little $10,000 for those people. So that's what Rand Paul was uncovering. And who's paying for this? Congress is. This money is not being approved out of thin air. Congress passes budgets, and they allow this money to be spent, and we're sick of it. Here's Rand.
Does it exist every year? We have this Department of Doge. Are they going to be able to get rid of it? But the only way to get rid of it is to spend less money. So if you give the National Science Foundation $4 billion one year and then you increase it to $8 billion, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that you're going to get more waste, not less. This has been going on since the 70s, but it has exploded. But you have to be willing to cut spending for the overall department. NIH will have more waste if you give them more money. They spent $3 million studying what kids do when they look at ads for food on Facebook. So they had a whole bunch of kids look at ads for food on Facebook, and that was $3 million worth.
Genius.
I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars to drill holes into cats' head, spin them around rapidly, and study motion sickness. Sounds more like animal cruelty than it actually sounds like an experiment.
Yeah,
but the list goes on and on.
And that's not to mention, I mean, you have stolen COVID relief funds, $8 million. One guy from Florida did it to buy an island. You mentioned the cat. The list does go on and on. But you also alluded to this, Senator. Do you think your tradition ends this year? In other words, is this the year that DOJ eliminates the need for you to go through and make this list because they've done it over the course of the intervening 365 days?
Ultimately, it takes Congress. Congress has to get rid of the spending. DOJ can point out the spending problems and the waste the same way I've been pointing it out. But the reason it's not eliminated is they don't have the votes to get rid of the spending. So I am very hopeful that DOJ will draw attention to this the same way I've been drawing attention to it. But I'll give you an example. About a year ago, there was a chip spill, a bill to subsidize microchips, semiconductors in the United States. Well, in that bill, they doubled the size of the National Science Foundation. Now, the National Science Foundation is the one that's famous for doing a study on whether tequila or gin makes people more aggressive.
Wow.
So they fed fish, half of them tequila, and the other half of the fish gin, and they decided which made the fish more aggressive. That's the National Science Foundation.
Good job.
Most of the terrible, wasteful projects, the crazy stuff and experiments that's going on is National Science Foundation. In the CHIPS bill, all the Democrats and half the Republicans voted to double the size of the National Science Foundation. So why is there more waste? Because the idiots in Congress keep giving them more money.
Well,
the
it will
more
be
money
interesting
they
to see
have,
again
the more money they
what
can
happens
waste.
when.
So you can clearly see that those fish alcohol experiments are being run by probably people who really enjoy alcohol. They're like, a little bit for you, a little bit for you, a little bit for me, a little bit for you, a little bit for you, a little bit more for me. I'm going, hey, guys, this is supposed to be a science lab, all right? What are you doing? We're doing science right now. As they're hammered drunk, falling all over themselves. That's Rand Paul. Shout out to Rand Paul for calling out our useless Congress. We'll see just how useless they are and whether they can pick a speaker so that, we can have President Trump running the country right on time. Not 1 minute delay. All right, so we've got that update. We'll see if they can pull it together. Now, elsewhere, we're battling with Democrats, including this woman, a state attorney general busted for getting free legal support from Democrat operations. A letter recently exposed on this woman, Chris Mays, the AG from Arizona, who has been working with this organization, brought to our attention by Jeff Clark. He posted a letter saying that her team got contacted by the States United Democracy Center. And we're going to read through this PDF and a copy of this. But some background on the story comes from Red State. They tell us that allies were working with her office, basically commandeering her office in order to secure the election. Democrat AG Chris Mays worked with States United Democracy Center in what some have characterized a targeted effort to get Trump. Okay, these people are not clever enough on their own. Fani Willis can't indict anything other than Nathan Wade, right? She's terrible at her job and totally corrupt and incompetent. Alvin Bragg, not much better, although we don't know if he's indicting anybody in his bedrooms. But we also, that he's working with as special counsel. But we also then have AG Chris Mays. She gets elected, doesn't really know how to handle anything. So these private law firms come in and they say, Just give us the keys to the AG's office. We'll handle the rest. The left-leaning group collaborated with Mays on election integrity strategies. And in a letter that they sent on May 4th from Christine Sund, we'll read it. But here's what Christine Sund does and what she has done before. She has previously served as special assistant to former California Attorney General Javier Becerra. Christine Sund, Senior Vice President of Legal. She's also the policy director, or was, for the ACLU, Deputy Legal Director, Southern Poverty Law Center out of Alabama. She has worked on immigration rights, LGBTQ plus rights. And I keep saying she, but I don't really know because they're not using that pronoun. After graduating from law school, Christine clerked for Judge Robert, and Christine works in private practice. Don't think there's a she or a he or any pronouns in there. So the person who was writing this bio is probably like, I don't know. What should I say? Just use the first name. All right, cool. So Christine Sund is the person who sent the letter. And here is what Christine sent. You can see Christine signed this right here, Senior Vice President of Legal, and sent this one over to Chris Mays. Wrote the following to Chris Mays, basically Chris Mays' legal team. Says, hey, Dan Barr, who is the chief of staff for Chris Mays. Dear Dan, I'm writing and emailing you this letter, which is a retainer for the Arizona Attorney General's office. So that's Chris Mays' office. They say this letter now explains and confirms the terms and conditions under which the States United, quote, Democracy Center will undertake to advise Chris Mays in developing legal strategies to ensure the integrity and the security of your elections. So some third-party non-governmental group that is called States United, which is run by this person called Christine, which has a ton of other lawyers on staff. Let me share with you all these people. This is the leadership team. So Christine Sund obviously is a part of that. We've got Lizzie, Ranjana, Jen, Joanna, and Thania, all working on the leadership team. So this is the staff who is a part of this team. And it's big. This is a big organization. Legal assistants, project assistants, senior researcher, developmental associations. We've got attorneys, special assistant to the CEO, senior counsel. We've got chief of staff to the CEO. More lawyers are on board, more lawyers, okay, multiple lawyers. So I don't know who's paying for this, but it's a lot, all right? Project associate, we got some like interns, legal fellows down here. This is a big organization, okay? As a person who built a law firm, to hire how many people this is? 30 people, perhaps? It's a big operation. Costs a lot of money to employ all these people. Who's paying for this? So we'll come back to that because they didn't bill Chris Mays for any of this. They didn't bill for their legal services. It was all free. How come it was free? Here is what the advisory board looks like if you have any questions. Donald Ayer, former U.S. Deputy AG. Michael Chertoff, DHS. Jack Conway, former AG Kentucky. We got Janet Napolitano's on this list, former governor of Arizona and also Homeland. Governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Ridge. Okay, it's a big organization. You may not have heard of him, but Michael Steele's on the list. Man, he was useless at the RNC for a while too. So a bunch of people are on this list, and we know what their political disposition is based on the record from Christine Sund, who worked for the ACLU and more. So they are working, and they sent this letter saying, we're ready to work for you. The enclosed general terms explain the terms that govern our engagement and other critical aspects of our representation. By signing this letter, Chris Mays, the Attorney General, you agree to the general terms. Our work will also be provided pro bono. We're not going to bill you for this, because we're exploiting your office, okay? This is a benefit for us. We're going to give you guidance on election integrity, and we're going to do it for free, because if you have to pay for us, it's a big thing. You will not make expenditures or incur indebtedness in connection with this representation and the services provided by States United. Incredible. That whole team of people are going to work for free? Who's paying for this? Although blankety blank will be the ones principally responsible for this engagement, other States United lawyers and non-lawyers may handle various portions of this matter pro bono as well. Everybody's working for free because we just want you to do what we tell you to do. We want you to use your office to implement our policies because they're really great for Democrats. If the foregoing meets with your approval, we would appreciate it if you would sign and return a copy of this engagement letter. We're pleased to have this opportunity, I'm sure they are, to be of service and to work with you, I'm sure. So Christine Sun and their legal team now commandeering the Attorney General's office. Chris Mays isn't smart enough to figure out any election litigation protections on her own, so she's got to bring these other people in. Dan Barr signed it from her office. Yep, here you go. Great. They'll come in, they'll just do this, file this, charge this. This was May 15th, 2023. And I'm curious, when did Chris Mays indict the alternate electors in Arizona? When was that? Did these people provide any guidance on this? Yeah, that's curious. That's what I thought. Okay, so Attorney General Chris Mays announced on April 24th that a state grand jury had indicted 18 people for false electors. So if the indictment came April 24th, my question is, did these people advise on that? Legal protections? Did they advise Chris Mays to pursue criminal charges against the alternate electors? That needs to be answered. So here are some other general terms. Now, what you'll see in legal contracts, or we call them fee agreements, you'll often see language like this. This is basically boilerplate language, but we'll still run through it. Now, the one thing that I'm looking for, which I do not believe is in here, would be a scope of work. So articulating what they're actually doing, and it's not in here. Usually you put that up here at the top. So they say, under certain rules where we practice, we must advise you, you may consult with independent counsel. Okay, we're just going to give you documents, and we'd encourage you to get other people to look at them. Okay, so consult with other lawyers. Like, we're going to tell you how to rig your elections in favor of Democrats. My words, not theirs. That's my opinion. But they're now going to be guiding you. And Chris, you're the Attorney General, so maybe talk to other Attorney Generals if you disagree. Also, you retain the right to consult with independent counsel anytime we represent you. So if you don't like what we're saying, go talk to someone else. We're not responsible for any advice an independent counsel may give you. Now, we may also use our team, like paralegals, pro bono, for free, totally free. Here's a waiver of conflicts. They say, we may also represent other clients that might conflict with you. And during the time we're representing you, we may be asked to represent other people who are directly adverse to you, like we're working against somebody, representing somebody who might have interests opposed to you. And so conflict of interest stuff, we'll notify you if there's any actual conflict that emerges. So they're doing conflicts checks. Now, during this representation, if there's any ethical problems, we'll raise those up. And if there's an ethical problem, we'll let you know. To enable us to do our job, you're going to cooperate fully with us. You're going to disclose to us, okay, so the AG's office is also going to give them a bunch of information. Disclose to us all facts that we think are relevant. That's going to form the basis of our legal advice. We provide legal services to you. We store your documents in the cloud. You can terminate this representation at any time. If this is terminated, then the attorney-client relationship is terminated upon completion. We hold on to your file for a certain period of time. Governing laws, if there's a conflict, we will arbitrate this in Washington, D.C. Okay, so all boilerplate stuff, nothing that interesting in there, other than the fact that this entire team of people are now pledging themselves for free to Chris Mays, the Attorney General, so they can commandeer her office and instigate her into changing, maybe even indicting alternate electors. So Barr signed the agreement. It required cooperation and allowed the group to destroy certain internal materials at their discretion, right? And so they're not going to hold on to files. So they'll tell you that at the conclusion of the representation, our attorney-client relationship will be subject to the close. At the close of this, you will not be provided any additional materials other than the ones you've requested, right? So it's just like termination of files, saying here, these items also may be destroyed in our sole discretion and consistent with our document preservation policies. So when our representation is over, we're going to start shredding our manila file folders. If you want copies of those, let us know. You agree to give up any right that may obligate us to retain materials beyond those set out above. So they can also shred their docs, which is perfect for them. So they say that Jeff Clark was the person who came into possession of this. Don't know exactly how he got it. But as we know, on July 27th, States United, they sent a memo that was suggesting a bunch of legal actions against Trump and Trump supporters. And they recommended people get charged with crimes, and guess what? They did get charged with crimes all over the place. They advised further investigations into Trump, Giuliani, Meadows, Eastman, Ronna McDaniel, Cleta Mitchell. They say they coordinated to subvert 2020, and the memo referenced 6 people under direct scrutiny. Now, a person who's an influential person in this is called Norm Eisen. He's an advisor to them, although we didn't see him on the board list. He co-authored a book called The Democracy Playbook, which is implementing color revolution tactics. The handbook includes a section on Ukraine's Orange Revolution. Now, color revolutions are often seen as externally orchestrated efforts that destabilize sovereign governments under the guise of promoting democracy. You're familiar with these. These movements are viewed as utilizing non-military means to effectuate regime change. Sounds like what Eisen is attempting to do now. The States United Democracy Center tried to commandeer Chris Mays' office and to weaponize that office against pro-Trump individuals. 18 people got indicted as a result of that. And did Chris Mays come to that conclusion on her own? Or was she being guided by some third-party entity who's working for free? Yeah, come work for us. What's your position? What would you like me to do? And as soon as they're done, representation terminated, attorney-client relationship ends, and their files go into the shredder bin. So Chris Mays is a person who is now going to be playing the victim and fighting against Trump and saying, we're united to stop Trump, saying she's not afraid of the Trump administration and she's going to push back against his immigration policies. Okay, Chris. Now, she's the AG. In an interview with The Guardian, this paper, she said any move by Trump in his second presidential term to unpick the rights of dreamers would be a bright line for her. I'm not going to stand for an attempt to deport them or to undermine them in any way. Says, I'll definitely be fighting on behalf of the dreamers. These folks are firefighters, police officers, and teachers. They're part of the fabric, and we're going to protect them. Trump tried to scrap DACA protections and only stopped narrowly by the Supreme Court, then recently softened his position, and so she's fighting for DACA. Arizona Attorney General also had strong words about any attempt to construct detention camps. Says, if Trump tries to engage in family separation or build mass deportation, I will do everything I can legally to fight that. That's not happening in Arizona, not on our soil. Well, we'll see what Tom Homan says about that. Sounds like you might be obstructing the efforts of the federal government. We'll see. Mays added that family separation has left up to 1,000 families still rent apart 6 years later. That's not who Arizonans are. I get so tired of that phrase. No, Chris, we're all like you. Yeah, we're all tyrants who have our offices commandeered by third parties. So they are anticipating this. We'll see. And if families don't want to be separated, they can deport themselves together, as we expect to happen. A complicating factor is Prop 314, the ballot measure passed in Arizona. With 63% of the vote, it allows state police to arrest any undocumented person who crosses into the U.S. other than at legal ports of entry. Mays said the decision is not going to deter her. 64% of Arizonans said, enough already, just arrest them, okay? Mays said the decision would not deter her. She says, well, that tells us is Arizonans are fed up with the dysfunctional border. that they have caused. Her party has enabled it. So Chris Mays pretending like she's a major fighter. She's part of this team. This is Mark Elias. The Democrat lawfare operatives are constantly scheming and thinking up new ways upon which they can execute their plans to take out Republicans. And they're still going through a post-mortem trying to figure out how they were so wrong so badly. And this is Mark Elias having a conversation with Jennifer Rubin, who's also going through like another midlife crisis. Here's what they sounded like. Just a small snippet of this so we can see what these people sound like on their tubes.
And favorite columnist Jen Rubin is here to discuss the legacy media, pardons, and how we oppose Donald Trump going into 2025. Welcome back to Defending Democracy. I'm Mark Elias. Let's get started. Thank you, Jen Rubin, for joining us on Defending Democracy.
It is a pleasure to be here, Mark.
So I want to jump right in to one of your most recent columns because, I always find myself reading your columns and then I'm like, yes, I agree with all of that. But this one, I really, really agree with all of it. And you talk about how courage is in short supply among Democrats and the media. And I, first of all, agree with you on everything. But I want to sort of give you a chance to sort of unpack.
Yes, you guys need more courage. Yeah, stand up more loudly and explain your policies with even more bravado. Good job there.
Not just that it is in short supply, but the why.
Yes.
Why is it in short supply?
Why?
Yes. Let me begin by saying that, of course, the worst shortage is on the Republican side, which allowed Donald Trump to come to power, fostered him, has apologized for him, has normalized him. And simply by pointing out the Democrats and the media's errors should in no way deter from the central responsibility that Republicans have for the damage they are doing to democracy. That said, I think what is happening is a very disagreeable but familiar pattern that you see in democracies that are backsliding, and that is what Timothy Snyder calls obeying in advance. In other words, capitulating, trying to ingratiate oneself with the new power structure to try to improve one's condition or at least shelter one from harm. Now, it's most apparent in the media where you
all right, so that's all we can take, but we made it about 2 minutes, so we did pretty good. That's what they sound like on their cable, on their internet podcast, whatever they're doing. And they really agree with each other a lot, so that's what it sounds like. Now, this is from a good account to follow, a very great researcher called The Researcher. She does an amazing job at listen_to_learn. And she keeps good tabs on these people, so we don't have to. But the question is, what is Chris Mays ultimately going to do? She is saying she's going to stand firm against Trump and protect against illegal immigration solutions, I suppose. But the question is, who is really in charge of the AG's office in Arizona? Other entities like States United Democracy Center are highly embedded in these relationships. Question is, who's in charge? We're going to keep covering this story, other Arizona election affairs, because there should be repercussions coming for these people who try to commandeer and interfere in our elections. They are not a democratically elected group. They should not be imposing their policy positions on the Attorney General's office. And so we've got questions about the communications that went back and forth and how much influence did they actually have. Thanks for joining us, subscribing as we keep our eyes on this one and more. All right, now we've got one final update on the day, and here is the story. Jay-Z and his defense team got blasted by the judge in the Diddy Sean Combs case. You see, this is the case involving Jane Doe versus Sean Diddy Combs and a bunch of other people. And Jay-Z is now on this list. Now, what has happened is Jay-Z's defense team sent in this filing, which was very aggressive. You can see even right from the get-go, they say this is defendant Sean Carter's, his real name is Jay-Z, memorandum of law in support of his emergency motion for an order to show cause. And an order to show cause in the law is like being called into the principal's office. It's like you did something very bad and the judge wants you to explain yourself or else you're in trouble. It's not even a warning, right? At one point, it's like, I'm going to send you to the principal's office if you don't abide. You're like, okay, and you abide. Nope, you're straight to the principal's office and you're talking to the principal. And if you're in trouble, you could be like sanctioned. You could be imprisoned, okay, if you're in real big trouble. So it's a big problem. Now, Jay-Z's team is saying this is appropriate right now. Call them into the principal's office and scold them. And they also want an order for the preservation of evidence. They're saying that this other attorney's deleting stuff. And they want to strike the complaint. And they want to dismiss Jay-Z from this action. It's like, man, they're asking for a lot here. And so the judge came and responded to this and says, you guys are out of your friggin' minds. So let's go through this and see what they said in their position into the courts. Now, this is a civil case. This is not the criminal Diddy case. And there are lawsuits flying all over the place. And so here is what this one says from Jay-Z's defense. They say, listen, we are now submitting this because this civil lawyer who is suing our client is committing major mistakes. They say admissions by the Jane Doe, who allegedly is a 13-year-old or was a 13-year-old person at the time of her abuse. They say that Jane's made her own damning admissions throughout the course of this case. And in fact, some of these admissions came from her own father in another NBC interview. So that shows this whole case was obviously false from the start. If her dad is saying she's a liar, she's a liar. They say the timeline, the location, the occurrence of the events that are alleged in Jane Doe's complaint against Jay-Z, they're impossible. If her dad is telling the truth, everything she claimed is false. She claims her father picked her up after the assault, and he ever taking that 5-hour trip. Picked her up after the assault, he ever taken that 5-hour trip. All right. She claims she spoke with musician Benji Madden that night, but he was not even in New York. She also claims, Jane Doe, that the assault took place at an after party hosted in a private residence, but photos show that Jay-Z was at an after party at another place in a nightclub. Now, impressed by NBC, Jane Doe says, I've made some mistakes. May have made a mistake in identifying, says, quote, not all faces there are as clear. And that she was even, quote, guessing about some key details, including how long it took to reach the venue. Now, what is even more, says Jay-Z's defense team, is that Jane Doe admits she does not have a single corroborating witness over the last 24 years to confirm this at all. Now, her unsupported allegations continue to crumble under scrutiny, as the evidence and the lack thereof reveals glaring inconsistencies and impossibilities. For example, her account describes a jumbotron at the scene of the Video Music Awards, but according to the NYPD, there was never a jumbotron there. Hello? MTV applied for a permit to install one, but they got denied. She references a house that supposedly fits the description and the location of the assault, but that house doesn't exist either. And her allegations became even more dubious when considering the nightclub evidence. Photos from the night in question show Diddy and Miss Jennifer Lopez at both Lotus and Twirl, which are clubs in New York. NBC reported that photos separately show Jay-Z was at Lotus following the VMAs. Now, taken together, their inconsistencies, the timeline impossibilities, and the lack of corroborating evidence makes her allegations wholly unreliable. Now, not only do these extraordinary inconsistencies undermine her case, they highlight severe misconduct by her lawyer. Right now, this lawyer is going after their lawyer. The judge is not going to be happy about this. Anthony Busby. Now, unable to escape the foundational cracks in his case, Busby was forced to backpedal, refuting the very allegations that he signed his name to. In an attempt to deflect from his own failure, he foists blames on another law firm, claiming the case was vetted before he got it. And so concerned is Busby, this lawyer for Jane Doe, that he is now having his client sit for a polygraph. The takeaway is obvious, all right? Busby failed to undertake a reasonable inquiry into the facts before filing the complaint. And he has a duty to do that. You can't just file complaints willy-nilly. But that was just one step in this cavalcade of misconduct. Though he signed his name to the pleadings, he has declined to even seek admission to this court, trying to circumvent the court's authority. Now, although the photos show Lopez in a different outfit at the nightclub than what she wore to the VMAs, it's clear the photos were taken on the same evening because her jewelry and her accessories were unchanged. So, photo sleuthing there. Now, Busby and his rule breaking also extends beyond this action, says Jay-Z. He has a long history of abusing the courts and shirking his ethical responsibilities. Ooh, this is getting spicy. In a case in California, for instance, Busby was admonished by the judge for violating pretrial rules. And a federal court in Texas also rejected another fee agreement. Now, the inconsistencies in Jane Doe's case that was revealed in an NBC interview, coupled with her lawyer and his chronic inability to follow the rules, creates a substantial risk that Busby, the lawyer, will destroy evidence in this case, including evidence of his own misconduct. And so we need an order immediately mandating the preservation of all evidence relevant to this case to ensure that Jay-Z has a full opportunity to present his defense. Busby's not even admitted to this court. And so that's why we need an order, saying that his allegations about Jay-Z are scandalous and they're warranting striking them from the complaint. Wow. So this lawyer is just on a tear. Now, the judge is going to come back and hit him equally hard. Busby filed this lawsuit against Combs. The initial complaint alleged that Combs, along with another male celebrity, arred the plaintiff at an after party. They didn't name Mr. Carter at the time. And in fact, they tried to extort Jay-Z an exorbitant sum in private mediation. They say, we're going to go false unless you pay me a bunch. Jay-Z refused. It was only after this attempt to pay him that they added Jay-Z as a defendant. They said, oh, well, now we know who you are. Now we know what your name is. So they alleged that on September 7th, Jane Doe went to an after party, apparently hosted by Mr. Combs, large white residence. At the after party, the plaintiff recognized many celebrities like Fred Durst, Benji Madden, and others. They then allege that she was drugged and assaulted by Combs. They also say that she was previously assaulted by an unnamed person. Obviously, that's turned out to be Jay-Z. 5 days after Busby filed the complaint containing these allegations, NBC News published a story containing excerpts of interviews that its reporters held with this woman and her father that literally undermines the merits of the lawsuit. We've gone through those and the inconsistencies that they've identified. Now, Busby effectively admitted to NBC that they have failed to do their job, and this guy's got a bunch of other misconduct in other lawsuits that he's just going to shove in front of the court. Your Honor, this guy's a piece of work. And so you should order him to show cause and drag his butt in here and make sure that he doesn't delete any evidence whatsoever. Saying the NBC story makes it extremely likely that he's not even vetting claims and he's going to hide his failures to do his job under the rules. Busby's utter disregard for the rules shows that he's got inadequate procedures in his office and just continues to blast him. So we see that this was a very aggressive filing. Alex Spiro says, for the reasons above, enter an order, making sure that this lawyer doesn't delete his evidence, and issue an order to show cause, ordering Busby and his firm to show why the complaint should not strike Mr. Carter from it, signed by Alex Spiro. All right, so very aggressive. Now, the judge did not like that at all. You can see he also submitted a declaration. In other cases, he's attached exhibits. And the judge came out and responded, and here is what she says. Judges Annalisa Torres, district judge, coming out of the Southern District of New York. We spent a lot of time there. Here is what the judge wrote. All right, guess what? Plaintiff Jane Doe filed this lawsuit October 20th, 2024, saying there was a violation of New York law. And the court on November 6th granted Jane Doe's motion to proceed anonymously, explaining that Diddy and Jay-Z and others hadn't appeared in this matter and said that anonymity was important for now. So then on December 8th, she amended her complaint. Didn't originally have Jay-Z, but now it does. Plaintiff again sought leave to proceed anonymously, but this time Carter's counsel appeared and moved to dismiss the complaint. Carter also moved for an expedited hearing. Then they filed another declaration saying that an associate with his law firm had a phone conversation with an unnamed woman who claimed that Jane Doe's lawyer encouraged her to lie. Carter's lawyers asked the court to consider this information, saying, "Don't allow this woman to be anonymous." Now, Jane Doe's lawyers denied Carter's allegation and said none of that's true. So then on December 13th, just a few weeks ago, Carter's attorney filed an additional letter to the court. In the interview, the plaintiff, who was speaking anonymously with NBC News, explained her allegations against Jay-Z and explained why she's coming forward right now. Carter's lawyer, Jay-Z's lawyer, points to the interview, saying this is totally inconsistent with her actual civil complaint. He also says that her counsel violated a bunch of rules by failing to investigate the complaint. They requested a bunch of briefing and orders to show cause and more. Then they submitted another filing, a motion for an emergency order striking the amended complaint and ordering the preservation of evidence. So the judge laid out the background and tells us this is where we're at. Let's break these down into various issues. First, whether this person can proceed anonymously. The court is now going to balance the interest in anonymity versus the interest in public disclosure. And they give us these various factors, right? These are things that we'll put on a scale, we'll weigh them against each other and decide. For example, does this litigation involve matters that are highly sensitive and of a personal nature? Yeah, I'd say so. If you're being AR'd as a 13-year-old, yeah, it's probably not a good thing. So from her perspective, yeah. And that carries a stigma in society, right? So we got to protect the victim. Okay. Whether identification poses a risk of retaliatory physical or mental harm to the parties who want to proceed anonymously. Looking at it from the victim's perspective in a light most favorable to the party asking for anonymity. Diddy's like a gangster, isn't he? Wasn't that his whole public persona? He's like, a G or something, whatever. So maybe he'll take him out. I don't know. Whether identification presents other harms and the likely severity of those harms. So they go through the factors. The judge is laying them out for us. She says, here, when I analyze everything, the weight of the factors tips in favor of allowing anonymity, at least for now. In her amended complaint, she says that she was drugged and AR'd. She was only 13. Obviously, that's pretty big for her. Courts in this district have recognized those are highly sensitive cases. She's also particularly vulnerable to damages if this information is released. PTSD, depression, seizure disorders, and plaintiff's counsel also asserts that many of people who've also filed lawsuits against Mr. Combs are being threatened for their decision to speak out. And finally, even though she sat for an interview, she did so anonymously. And so it's true, she says, there are several factors that weigh against allowing her to proceed anonymously. Here, she's challenging the actions of private parties, not the government. And given the media attention surrounding all of this, the public does have a substantial interest in learning more about this. Now, alternative mechanisms, though, may exist. We could just redact her name, seal documents and stuff. But the anonymity may prejudice the defendants. And so we don't take that lightly. But nevertheless, we're still early in this case. And so we are going to have anonymity. Jay-Z loses, anonymity is granted. But it could change. The court intends to revisit this decision at a future date. So now we turn to Jay-Z's lawyers. And here's where the judge gets irritated. Now, since Jay-Z's attorneys first appeared in this case 17 days ago, he has submitted a litany of letters and motions attempting to impugn the character of the plaintiff's lawyer, many of them expounding on the so-called urgency, quote, of this case, saying that their lawyer is self-promoting and accusing him of extortion and giving us examples of all of that. And then the judge says, Jay-Z's lawyers relentless filing of combative motions containing inflammatory language and ad hominem attacks is inappropriate, a waste of judicial resources, and a tactic unlikely to benefit his clients. So Jay-Z is taking a look at this. Like, the lawyer just got called out. Judges don't like to call out the lawyer in front of their clients generally because it undermines that attorney-client relationship. But the judge just said to Jay-Z, essentially, that your lawyer is making it worse for you, buddy. Judges don't generally cross that line because now Jay-Z is going to go, what? You are not going to help? This court will not fast track the judicial process merely because the lawyer demands it. And moreover, although Carter's attorney, Jay-Z's attorney, assails Busby as having chronic inability to follow the rules, guess what, Jay-Z lawyer? Your lawyer has failed to abide by this court's clear rules. Under the court's individual practices in civil cases, this is why you just don't like, Judge, they're not following the rules. The judge is like, oh, you want to talk about rules, huh? Under the court's individual practices in civil cases, and with limited exceptions, a pre-motion letter is required prior to filing any motion. Now, although Carter's attorney, Jay-Z's attorney, stated that he intended to file immediately a motion to strike the first amended complaint, he did not give Jane Doe the required 5 business days to respond, did not wait for the court to set a motion schedule, did not state whether any exception to the rules applies. And this is unacceptable. Woo-wee. Says on the merits, Carter's motion to strike is denied. Motions to strike are generally disfavored, will only be granted if there's strong reason to do so. Carter's motion, which summarily asserts that their claims are baseless and salacious, does not clear that high bar. You can't just throw those words around without backing them up. Counsel is hereby advised, Jay-Z, that any further motions filed in violation of the court's practices may be denied on that ground alone. Lastly, although Carter's attorney is entitled to file a Rule 11 motion without first seeking leave, the court discourages this. If he still intends to serve them with a motion for sanctions, the court denies his request to shorten the safe harbor provision to 1 day. Not happening. And so, Carter's motion to strike the amended complaint is denied. By January 10th, Jane Doe shall file her response to Carter's motion for an order directing the preservation of evidence, and then Jay-Z shall reply. Otherwise, the clerk of the court is respectfully directed to terminate the motions so ordered in New York the day after Christmas by Annalisa Torres, United States District Judge. So, interesting filing there. She's not happy about it. And I know sometimes we'll say like the judge blasted somebody. This is a blast from a judge. It may not read like it, but it is. You're not benefiting your client. Okay? Put it in writing. Stop doing what you're doing because you're making Jay-Z's case go bad. And we're not going to be following your demands. So that is a fun one. We'll see if what Jay-Z does. His lawyer's like, yikes. Now, Alex Spiro is a big lawyer, right? He's a big combative lawyer, according to many people who've worked with him. So we'll see how he responds to that as well. But here is how CBS News was reporting this.
Jay-Z sexually assaulted a 13-year-old girl back in 2000. The lawsuit was originally filed against Sean Diddy Combs back in October, then refiled on Sunday to add Jay-Z, whose real name is Sean Carter. The plaintiff, identified as Jane Doe, says she was assaulted by both men at a Video Music Awards after party. The artists have denied those accusations. Now, in a statement through his company, Rock Nation, Jay-Z responded to the lawsuit and the lawyer representing the plaintiff, saying, quote, "My lawyer received a blackmail attempt called a demand letter from a lawyer named Tony Busby. What he had calculated was the nature of these allegations and the public scrutiny would make me want to settle. No, sir, it had the opposite effect. It made me want to expose you for the fraud that you are," his words, in a very public fashion. "So no, I will not give you one red penny," end quote. Now, the lawyer, Busby, did not immediately respond for comment on this, but has refuted Carter's accusations of blackmail on social media. Meanwhile, Sean P. Diddy Combs is still in custody in New York, awaiting his trial on federal sex trafficking charges. He tried to secure bail, but was denied
multiple times.
CBS News legal contributor.
Look at that. Mayor Adams gave him the key to the city.
Levinson joins us now to go over this lawsuit. Welcome.
Oh, that's great. So you can see Southern District of New York is going to be very busy for the foreseeable future. Here's a little bit more.
The woman alleging she was raped by Jay-Z and Sean Diddy Combs can remain anonymous. The woman says both men raped her at a party when she was 13 years old. Jay-Z's legal team had fought to get the case dismissed, arguing his accuser should have to reveal her name. But the judge disagreed. ABC's Morgan Norwood has the latest.
All right, so we read through it. We'll keep our eye on this one and the Diddy case. Who knows where this one is going to go? It's a civil lawsuit, and there's about, I think, 100 or so of them flying around. So we'll keep our eye on this case, and we'll see who was enabling this type of, these allegations to be thrown about. Still much more to cover and more to be revealed on this case and more. We'll be here waiting for the filings and covering them as soon as they drop. Thanks for joining, my friends. Thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you back here on the next one. All right, and so, my friends, it has been a wonderful stream. If you're just joining us, quick recap on what we talked about so that you rewind and don't miss a thing. But we asked about an election certification delay and read a couple good articles on that today because the Republican margin is very thin, and if they don't have a speaker on the 3rd, that means we may not have a functional House on the 6th. And so definitely check that out so you can be apprised of what some possibilities are that might cause a rub in this upcoming important day. Then we talked about this letter that Attorney General Chris Mays from Arizona got from the States United Democracy Center, where they were offering free legal services to the Attorney General so that they could develop legal strategies to help ensure the integrity of our elections for free. Read through that and talked about Chris Mays and what a terrible job she's doing in Arizona. And then we got a good Diddy update. We saw what some of Jay-Z's claims are about the alleged victim in this case. And I think his claims are interesting, right? Does sound like there are a bunch of money-hungry people who are coming out and their stories aren't adding up. And we got questions about anybody who brings claims 20 years later and has very little evidence to support it. So we'll keep our eye on that one as well. But now, my friends, it's time to hear from you. And we'll see what you say about all of this from our friends on YouTube, on Locals, on Rumble, and all across the fruited plains of the interwebs. Let's see who's here today, my friends. I hope you're having a beautiful Friday. And you're excited for the weekend ahead. We're excited about that too. Hey, and thanks for becoming members. We had a great members only stream this morning on YouTube and on Locals, and we'll be back tomorrow for our Saturday members only stream. We hope to see you there. Sign up on YouTube or sign up on Locals and join our amazing community. All right, let's see who's here. Hey, Donut is clipping for us today. Thank you, Donut. It's Friday. Let's dance. What's up? Knox Bierman is here. Hey, happy Friday, all. Does anyone think that Jay-Z didn't do weird things? He hangs out with this woman. Yeah, what's her name? Marina Abramovich, something like that. Something like that. That's a woman, too? All right, so, yeah. The celebrities, I'm not endorsing or condoning any of celebrity culture in any way, shape, or form. But we also have a lot of skepticism about, bad claims. So we'll see. But no, I think Jay-Z did a bunch of weird stuff. Probably J-Lo too. Probably Diddy too. My question is, who was enabling them for, 30, 40 years? Who are those people? Hey, what's up? Ravicus says Armstrong left also because he got elected to the North Dakota governor from Ravicus. Oh, interesting. He was on the list maybe over there with the States United. Flea Speech became a monthly supporter. Thank you, Flea Speech, for joining over on Rumble. Rumble is rolling out some new features, I think. If you're a supporter, I think you get an ad-free experience for a month or something like that. They're rolling out some new stuff. Knox is here, says, don't try this at home, which would be whatever this is. No idea what this is. Jay-Z and somebody tying their hair together? That looks strange. I don't know what that is. E. Texley says the House has 2 vacancies. Schiff and Gates have both resigned their seats. That's a good detail there, E. Texley. That's right. That is a good detail. We'll see what that does to the numbers. Voice of the People says Jeffries looks like Sloth from the Goonies. Yeah, he kind of does. Yeah, he does. Kind of sounds like him too, because he can't communicate very well. Hey, Kelly SWO says, why can't we license these politicians? Every other profession requires it. You have to get your political license. Like, you have to at least know the Constitution. You can't be on more than 2 psychopathic drugs. Antipsychotics is what I meant to say. If you're over 2 antipsychotics, then you're not licensed. Sorry. It's a hazard. It's a hazardous thing. So it's just too much antipsychotics. You're too bad. So, hey, what's up, Rob? CF Rob says, should have seen Rand Paul's waste list. They stuck electrodes into cats' spines. We read it, Rob. We read the whole thing. We read most of it here. We talked about it. Horrific. Spuds, 1 fish, 2 fish, drunk fish, puke fish. They're singing 99 bottles of beer on the wall with the fish. And they also have the fish on the walls, that turn and talk to you and sing. Yeah. And they're all getting hammered. Hey, Vanessa Stuller says, I'm behind, but there has been a president pro tem. David Richard Atchison served for 1 day in 1849. President Zachary Taylor refused to be inaugurated on a Sunday. Wow, that's a great fact. Vanessa, what a great fact that is. I didn't know that. Zachary Taylor said, no, this is the Lord's Day. Move it. Well, sir, you need to be president today. I'll be president on Monday. Today, it's about Jesus. All right, Vanessa. That's a fun one. I did not know that. So we'll see. There could be some shenanigans afoot. Hey, Rob on Rumble says, press that like button and repost this show immediately. And hit the share button on Rumble and on YouTube. And thank you, Rob, for the reminder. Hey, NY says, question, Rob, if this consulting law group is technically hired, can this agreement supersede Arizona's sunshine laws? I don't think they have the right to destroy documents regardless if it's attorney-client information. It still has to be retained by Arizona law. Is that correct? I don't know, NY. So I think what you're talking about would be like the government record-keeping laws, right? Government record-keeping laws. And I'm sure the AG's got some internal policies that allow them to engage in these relationships. And I'm sure, in other words, that they have created rules that allow them to delete certain materials. But I understand what you're saying. It's like when you have individual state level meetings, there are open records laws. You got to keep stuff. You have the public emails, right? It's all documented. What about this when it's attorney-client privilege? Great question, NY. Stephanie Womack says, let's go, Brandon. 34 months as a member. That's multiple babies. From Stephanie Womack's in the house. Thanks for supporting us for 34 months, Stephanie. Really, it means a lot. Couldn't do it without you. Thanks for being here for so long. NY says, these lawyers, if they are hired by the Arizona Attorney General, became government contractors and have no rights to destroy the documents. More Here is bringing in 5 more here. More Here has been a membo longer than his label says. Salty Vet Dad got gifted a membo. David Gray's coming in. Kuda Brown. What's up, Bobby Buress? And George W. Bush Center for Intelligence is here joining us as a member. The George W. Bush Center for Intelligence. What's in there? Is there anything in there? Does it store anything? Or is it just an empty shell? Hey, Bill Doucette. Hey, says 3,000 people are watching this and only less than 800 likes. Bill is saying, come on, people. Hit that like button. Thank you, Bill, for reminding everybody out there. We got Fred Pedamonte says Busby was Abbott's impeachment lawyer. This is well known. Was Abbott's impeachment lawyer. Tony Busby was in Texas. Hey, Bill Doucette, membo for 13 months. Thank you, Bill, for being here for 13 months. That is a baby and then some. Rob, can Canadians buy the health kit? No, unfortunately, it's USA residents only at twc.health/Robert. Use code Robert at checkout to save $30 and get free shipping. But don't do that if you're in Canada. Hey, Bliskin, happy to be here every stream. Bliskin, thank you for that, man. I'm really happy to have you here every stream. It's better when we do it together. You could always watch the show later, I guess, but We like it when we can participate amongst ourselves, you know. Hey, Bliskin, thank you for sending that one in. And my friends, let's see what else we have cooking. We're going to go over to X. We also had Kat Saunders send in 5 new membos. Kat Saunders in the house with a bunch of kittens kind of saundering. Kat, what's up? Thank you for doing this. Thanks for bringing in 5 new membos. Joshua 1 is coming in. That guy's here. Chaz is here. Sassy Tech and Michael Jones in the house, courtesy of Kat Saunders in the house. Thank you, Kat, for bringing in 5 new membos. And Brian Bishop says, you mean an update on Diddy? Do you mean an up Diddy date? I do. That's what I meant to say, Brian Bishop. An up Diddy date. Kind of reminds me of Ned Flanders. We're going to do a diddly diddly doodly update on Diddy's doodles. All right. So thank you, Brian Bishop, for that one. Let's see what's happening on X, my friends, before we wrap it up for the day and the week. We've got some good friends on X. Joe Miller says, nah, Biden's border czar will certify Trump. Biden's border czar will certify Trump. Which, all right, Tom Homan will, says Joe Miller. Hey, what's up? Fred Pedamonte says 3 former secretaries of Homeland on the board of that law firm. Yep, basically. Phil says there's no such thing as certification of a presidential election after the states send their respective certifications to DC. The VP merely opens the sealed certificates and counts the votes. Whoever has the majority of the votes actually cast is the president. And that's a comment from Prill. He's dead, Jim, says a delay in the certification would be an insurrection and interference with the peaceful transfer of power. If they try, I hope they're charged according to their own espoused rules. That's from He's Dead, Jim, over on X. Good to see you, He's Dead, Jim. All right, and so, my friends, that is where we will leave it on the day. ELZ says, hey, I was a baby last week and I missed my own delivery. She just like, you just woke up and there's a kid running around. Like, what the heck? The heck is this? Thank you for being here for 9 months, ELZ. Happy new baby to both of us. Glad to have you here. Thanks for joining on Locals. And Knox is here. Knox is the defense attorney in Texas, says, Tony Busby was Ken Paxton's impeachment attorney and tore all the special prosecutors a new one. I've heard the name before, but I don't know much about the guy. He also took on BP during the big spill and won a ton of money and ended up dating the judge. Who is this dude? This sounds like one badass attorney. He's like, yeah, I'm just going to come in, take this case over, win $1 billion against Beyond Petroleum or British, whatever it is. And then after he wins, the judge is like, you won $100 million. And she's like, and you must be hungry after that verdict. So what do you think we go out for a nice steak? Oh, that's great. All right. April Maid. Welcome. Thank you, Knox, for that. Did they get married or what? Did they just got to recuse each other, recuse from his cases now moving forward, you know, if they did the old Fannie Nathan. All right. April Maid is here. Yeah, that guy's like a serious badass attorney. I'm going to go win $1 billion and then I'm taking you out, Judge. Ready? Let's go. All right. April Maid. What's up, April Maid? Thanks for becoming a supporter over on the YouTubes. And my friends, it has been a beautiful and an amazing Friday stream. And I've been very glad to be with you this week, even though we took a couple days off to celebrate the birth of Christ. That was enjoyable too. But it's been a great week streaming. Of course, we're going to pause there for the evening. Let's see. Uncle Bozy just shared this. Did you ever refuse to represent a client? I'm sure I have. Yeah. I think every person accused has the right to counsel, but if I was a lawyer, you'd have a hard time taking the same people as clients. Jeffrey Dahmer, child murderers come to mind. Just wondering, I'm betting you would take the case if you absolutely had to in the interest of justice. Yeah, I mean, I haven't rejected anybody because of the criminal charge, but just people have been very difficult to work with. Like people will come into your office and they'll just be demanding things and they'll say, you have to do this and represent me like this and all this, and just say, no. It's not how this law firm works. I'm the lawyer, not you. So if you come in and you have a very aggressive posture, or you're just kind of a jerk or an a-hole or something like that, yeah, lawyers just, no, I'm not. we're not the right fit for you. You don't have to be rude about it. We're not the right fit for you. You're asking us to do things that we're not going to do, and you have a whole different vision for what this is all going to be. So we're not the right firm for you. So thanks, but no thanks. Go work with someone else who's going to do those things for you. Just Me says he went to court with his HOA over him parking his tank in his driveway. That guy did too. That guy has a tank too. Unbelievable. He would have a tank. The guy who dated the judge has a tank. Incredible. Sounds like he would. Yeah, so anyways, good stuff, my friends. I do think that defense attorneys should be willing to represent the worst of the worst. We need that check in our system. So, but I also do know that there are other lawyers. I did not have this personal problem, but I know other lawyers who are very uncomfortable representing certain types of crimes. Some criminal defense attorneys, like if you've been a victim of a sexual assault, maybe you don't want to represent people who are charged with sexual assault, stuff like that. And I can understand that. And I've had friends too, they've got small kids and babies and stuff. So the crimes involving the babies are like, I can't do it. But I don't know. There's something, I think it's not necessarily easy to look past those things. It's not at all, but you're there for a different reason. And those cases are gruesome. They're rough cases. Anyways. So you can spend a lot of time on that topic. Ollie, thank you, Ollie. Liza Jean got gifted a membo courtesy of Ollie in the house. And that, my friends, is where we will leave it on the day. Thanks for the fun questions and the thought-provoking conversation. The time is now to leave it there on the weekend. Of course, we are going to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. And we'd love to have you come join us. Thanks for becoming a membo on YouTube or on Locals. Tomorrow, we will be back with our Saturday members only stream. We'll see what the day has in store for us. And I hope to see you there. But it's been a great week. Hopefully you're still enjoying the holiday cheer and the holiday spirit. And you accomplished all the things you set your mind to this week, because this weekend is going to be a great time to rest, recover, to get outside, to get some more vitamin D, unplug from politics a little bit, and work on rejuvenating our souls and our spirits so that when we come back on Monday, we can get into it again, because we're going to need to do it. We got a long road of winning ahead of us, and we're going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night and an amazing weekend, my friends. I'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye.